To you again, Zoe. It's great to meet you. Congrats on the film. Ever since I first saw it, I've loved it. And I really heard the buzz at Slam Dance because I was at Slam Dance this year. And I heard a lot of buzz about it. So it was really exciting to be able to talk to you about it.
Thanks, Christy. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
So I guess to start, I'd love to know just, and I'm sure you've answered this a thousand times, but the origin of this particular story as a writer and director where you were inspired to go this way.
Yeah, so the inciting incident for the idea of the story was actually when I was 29. I was mistaken for a high schooler by a high school boy who asked me out to a house party, and I was like, I'm old and married, and I think we both misinterpreted this situation, and we had a laugh about it, and it
Right.
was like charmingly awkward for both of us. And then afterward, I couldn't stop thinking and kind of obsessing over what kind of woman would have said yes, what kind of woman wouldn't have corrected his misunderstanding, and where would she have needed to be in her life that felt like the best avenue for her to go down at the moment.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It's like, yeah, flattering, but no.
Right. Yeah. And it was also, I mean, and similar to, the Jake character in the movie, he was not necessarily the high school boy that was interested in me when I was in high school. So there were like layers of it where I could see a totally
Interesting.
different kind of woman taking a different kind of path.
Right. Yeah, that is interesting. So tell me a bit about the development of Misha, because she's a very interesting character. She's someone that kind of seems very, I mean, honestly satisfied in her life and in her routine and in what she has, but everybody else seems to think that it's not enough, that she needs to be doing more. And I feel
Yeah.
like that's something that a lot of us struggle with. We probably don't go out with high school boys, but it is something that I think we feel because people are always kind of scrutinizing what you're doing in your life as if it's not enough. And I think that this film paints a very interesting kind of portrait of that. So could you take me through that kind of creation of her?
Yeah. As I started to think about, who would this woman be that would have made this choice, I saw her as a very lonely woman and a very emotionally isolated woman. And so, in kind of the genesis of what she was up against, I was really looking at this idea of ambition and the pressure that it puts on us. And especially as women, I feel like even now, even though things are, you could say, the best they've ever been for us in the United States, it's still like, okay, the avenues that you have to explore without confusing people are career focused or family focused or artistry focused. Like, luckily for me, my family always embraced me being interested in the arts. And so I didn't get any, what are you going to do with your life questions. They were excited to have an artist in the family. But I know that's not the case for everyone pursuing creative careers. And so I really wanted to play with this idea of Misha as someone who, in a lot of ways, does truly have her shit together, but no one else sees it that way. So I feel like when we start with Misha, she does actually have her shit together. It's just, it doesn't look the way, our society expects it to look.
Right. And so this chance kind of encounter and meeting kind of shakes everything up for her. And you
Yeah, I
think
think
that kind of brings it out? Oh, go ahead.
no, I'm excited. So sorry. No, yeah, it's the first time that she feels seen as she sees herself. Misha has been holding the same job for 12 years, a job that she thinks is really cool and loves, at this historic theater. She's supporting herself in a way. She's privileged enough to have family inheritance to keep her cost of living low, but she sees herself as someone with something to offer, and her friends and family don't see her that way. And so when she meets Jake, who truly does see her that way, I think it feels like such a relief that she has a hard time letting go of that.
Yeah, definitely. So what was it like casting for Misha? Because the actress is fantastic, just perfect. And she
So
carries the film. I mean, it's, primarily she's like in every scene. So
yeah, Mitzi Akahashi is in every single scene,
yeah.
often in every single frame. And she was actually, I found her on Instagram. She was in a friend's film in New York, and I had been really wanting to find an actress that is in Misha's age range but looks a lot younger, similar to how I am. I'm in the well into the second half of my 30s and still get mistaken for a college student, and it's in the way I think I carry myself. I'm not quite sure, but Mitzi, our actress, has that same vibe where, even though she is a woman in her mid 30s, she reads a lot younger. And I really wanted that authenticity. I didn't want a 25-year-old actress playing a 30-year-old woman. And so I found her on Instagram. She was actually the first person that read for Misha because I we reached out to ask her to, and I loved her immediately and wanted to cast her. And then Allison, my producer, was like, "I hear you, but I think we should still keep auditioning just to do our due diligence." So we did, but then we ended up going with Mitzi, who truly, like you said, carries the film and brought something to the character so much better than what I had on the page, which is always what you're looking for as a director.
Yeah, absolutely. Was there any bit of like any kind of collaboration with the character once she came in? Like, did the character shift to a degree? And
Yeah,
she brought in her own kind of personality?
definitely. So we had a false start with this film because we begun casting in 2020, thinking, "Oh, the pandemic will be over, and we'll have right." So we brought her on in 2020, and then she was attached for 2 years before we could shoot. And so during that time, the two of us passed the script back and forth. We talked about different iterations of the character. I ended up changing some things to more closely reflect Mitzi and her life, like her family background, half Jewish, half Japanese, we brought into the character. Her former background as a competitive gymnast is true to Mitzi's character, and we brought it into Misha. So things like that definitely evolved. Mhm.
And so what was it like getting everybody else cast? Because that seems like a dream, easy kind of dream come true scenario.
Yeah.
Was there a lot more reading with like Jacob and everybody else?
Yeah, the Jake search was a deep search because, again, I knew this kid needed to be from Hawaii. Like Mitzi has family in Hawaii, but she was born and raised Southern California, or Northern, I think, California. So we knew that Jake needed to be a Hawaii boy through and through. So that automatically, made our pool smaller, which isn't a bad thing. It's an exciting thing, but we had to really dig into that pool. And we ended up narrowing it to two possible Jakes. One of them looked a lot more like a high schooler. He had a baby face. He looked truly like a 17, 18-year-old. And then we had Laird Reed, who has looked 25 since he was 16 years old, right? So he is like the opposite thing as Mitzi going on. And that wasn't how the character was written at all, but it was really interesting. And when we put them together, they had such immediate chemistry. So we actually filmed Mitzi and our two potential Jakes that we had narrowed it to, Laird and this one other talented actor. And we filmed them, and then we showed the chemistry reads to our target audience, which is women in their 30s and 40s. And we were like, which pair do you want to watch? And 150%, they were all like Laird. I mean, some of them were like the hot one. Because they truly understood without knowing the story why a woman in her 30s might pursue or allow herself to be pursued by a young man who looked like that and who had that kind of chemistry without even understanding the story, which is something we see a lot, I think, in age gap relationships where the man is older and the woman is younger.
Absolutely. I have noticed a trend though that there's a lot of films that have come out in the last year where there's the woman is older
Yeah,
and going after a younger man, which is
right. There's so many, and they keep coming. They keep coming. Like last summer, I haven't seen it yet, but it looks so good. And
yeah, there's like
yeah,
the Nicole Kidman one and Anne
yes,
Hathaway, and it's like,
yes.
oh yeah,
And
it's
Girls Will Be Girls. I'm not sure if you've seen that one,
I
but yeah,
have.
it's
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, I saw that it's Sundance. That was great.
yeah. So
Yeah,
on and on. So it's funny when that kind of like collective consciousness is happening because those films are from all across the world, right? They're coming out
right.
of India, coming out of France,
Yeah.
they're coming out of the US. It's really
Yeah,
funny.
women collectively just going
Yes.
after younger men.
Which doesn't surprise me because I actually was able to pitch Chaperone at AFM years ago, like 2019. They have a pitch fest, and it's basically to practice pitching. And I pitched it at the pitch fest for 600 people, just audience members. And the entire weekend afterwards was just women coming up to me being like, I really identify with that story because I had this experience. And then they would just start talking about their personal experiences. So yeah, it's definitely hitting a nerve.
Yeah. I do think yours is much more grounded than a lot of the ones I mentioned. Granted, a lot of those are like celebrity relationships and all kinds
Yeah.
of things that
Biopic.
most
Yep.
people can't really relate to.
Yep.
Um, yeah, and I know that you've often kind of like a little tagline, this is not a love story.
Yeah.
And so there's obviously a romance to a degree going on, but the movie is a lot more than that. Can you speak to it at all and tell us like as an audience how you would sell the film or how you'd pitch the film?
Yeah, I mean, It's a tragedy, and I'm not scared to. I don't think I'm spoiling anything when I talk about that. Is your the arc that you're going to see is not a traditional comedy, but it's a tragedy, and the story is Misha's story. And even though there is a romance with Jake, it's not their love story. And we use that tag to really put that front and center because sometimes audiences don't understand the intention, and I, there was some confusion as to what we were portraying, and
Right.
we didn't want in a certain demographic that were watching it, and they were like, well, if this is a love story, how come we don't see this happening and that happening? And so we were just like very boldly like, that's not what this is not a love story.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think it's perfect. And I think it takes away those expectations if you're going into it thinking that it is for sure.
Yeah.
So this is all filmed in Hawaii.
Mhm.
And almost like your whole cast and crew, right? Like almost everybody is from Hawaii. Can you
Mhm.
talk about that a little bit and how important it was to kind of keep that where you're from?
Yeah, I mean, every film I've made has been in Hawaii, mostly on Big Island, which is where I live. So it's really important to me when I'm setting a story here to make sure it reflects the actual community. And I think, that should be done whenever you're doing location-based filmmaking, but specifically somewhere where our community doesn't typically get to play itself on screen. Hawaii is still, even though again, it's getting better, it's still very much whitewashed. It's still a lot of outside productions coming in, and not necessarily telling stories that reflect people who live here. So even though when I look around at my, community in Hilo, everyone is Hapa or Asian or Hawaiian. And so we definitely wanted to make sure that that was, our casting choices as well. But we also still wanted the film to feel like it could be in any sleepy seaside town anywhere. So there's kind of this interesting, I think, dichotomy happening where it's definitely a Hawaii story. If you're from here, you can see that. But at the same time, we wanted it to not be just, oh, look at these beautiful beaches with Hawaii as a backdrop. So you could almost be like, oh, this is a sleepy California beach town. You could kind of go that way if you wanted.
Yeah, no, I absolutely see that. I'm not from Hawaii. I'm from Maine, so quite the opposite. And I mean, even in some regards, I mean, you could see it even being, I think it's also speaks to the relatability of the story, the character, and but you could see that anywhere. So you did a great job with that.
Thank you.
Um, so I know that we're almost out of time, but what's something that you would like, audiences to take away from the film? What are you hoping people will kind of walk away with?
That's a good question. When we were approaching Misha, we really approached her as this kind of unlikely predator. Or another way to look at it is that she is an invasive species. She's, put into this situation, a group of high school students where she doesn't quite belong. And then she starts making choices based on her own need for fulfillment, which I think is very human. We're all looking to get our needs met, and it ends up impacting everyone around her in a negative way. And it doesn't necessarily impact Misha through and through in a negative way, but the people that she's interacting with. So I think I just wanted to take a look at that and the way that our choices impact those around us. And then as we kind of pull back from that, the way that our choices of the pressure that we put on to the people that we care about can similarly have that same ripple effect, if that makes sense.
It does, yeah, and it just makes me think, how challenging was it to kind of have that story, but also create a character with Misha that, was relatable, that you did kind of root for and that you did like? Is there a challenge in that?
I mean, not for me particularly because I love to live in that gray space. And I've always been the kind of person in the friend group who everyone tells their shitty secrets to, who's like, oh man, I did this thing. And they always tell it to me because I'm able, for whatever reason, to approach it with a place without judgment. And so I was really able to bring that into Misha's character where I can see, all of the goodness in her and the shitty choices that she's making. And I can hold them right next to each other.
And there's also, I mean, there's definitely humor work, within as well. How difficult of a balance was that as well to have the drama, the romance, the humor,
Yeah,
all
I
those
think that
different,
was more difficult, right? Of the just the tonal to like keep building tension throughout, but then also
yeah,
to add moments of levity for sure. And there were
yeah.
definitely times where I'm like, are we pushing this too far? Should this not be funny here? Yeah, that
You
was something fun.
you kind of need it though, right? Levity is
Yeah,
needed.
of
It's kind of
course.
like
Otherwise,
life,
the
it's
film would
just
be kind of just a big bummer otherwise.
well, wonderful. Is there anything that you're working on next?
Yeah, I'm working on another film with my producing partner, Allison Week, who produced Chaperone, and that one's an adaptation of a Christiana Kakuvila short story. That's a Hawaiian author out here, and it's set in the world of cockfighting. So it's also looking at a very gray space, and yeah, I'm excited to be working on that.
And you're making a feature out of
Yeah,
it?
right now we're working on a short proof of concept, and then it will be a feature. Yeah. So
Oh,
I'm writing.
very
I'm writing that one. I'm not directing, but yeah.
That's very exciting. Well,
Mhm.
thank you again for taking the time to speak with me. Congrats on the movie. Really just I can't wait to see it hit theaters at some point. And yeah, just hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you. Appreciate talking to me.
Thanks.